This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guests only. The content here should not be taken as medical advice and is for informational purposes only. And because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Welcome to Once Shattered, Picking Up the Pieces, a podcast devoted to changing the way eating disorders and mental illness are viewed in our society. With your hosts, Jack and Linda Mazur and Ellen Bennett. Today's guest is Jason MacKenzie. Jason MacKenzie is a husband, father, and business owner. After losing his first wife, Cindy, and his 19-year-old daughter, Chloe, he's on a mission to educate men and the people who love them about grief and healing. He writes about loss, grief, and healing at his Substack, improvingman.substack.com.
Welcome, everyone, to Once Shattered, Picking Up the Pieces, episode 148. Grief and Healing as a Man and What Loved Ones Need to Know with Jason MacKenzie. I'm going to introduce him in just a minute, but first I need to introduce my husband and soulmate and best friend, Jack Mazur, and our dear friend and fellow advocate, Ellen Bennett. And thank you for joining us, listeners. I'm so excited to introduce you to Jason MacKenzie, and I'm going to do it right now. Welcome, Jason. And welcome, Jack and Ellen.
Welcome, Jason. This is really looking forward to this. I've been following you on LinkedIn and Substack for a while now, so I'm happy that you agreed to do this podcast with us, and we're really excited.
Welcome, everyone. It's a really timely conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
And remember, this podcast is brought to you by our nonprofits, KMB for Answers and the Emily Connection.
So I'd like to kind of set the tone with a quote. And my quote today is from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. There is no grief like the grief that does not speak. So welcome, Jason. And first, let me say we are so sorry for the loss of your loving first wife and then your precious daughter. What a beautiful way you are honoring them by helping others who are grieving, especially men, by sharing your own grief journey. Your honesty, transparency, and vulnerability tell me you are brave beyond measure. Please tell us a little about Cindy and your daughter, Chloe, and how things unfolded.
Yeah. So again, thank you for having me. So my wife, Cindy, my first wife, Cindy, we were together for 16 years, and she was a police officer, obviously the mother of our daughters, and she suffered a lot of childhood trauma, which I think is I've come to realize is a very common factor leading up to people choosing to go into helping professions like first responders and nurses and et cetera, wanting to help people and maybe protect them in ways that they weren't protected themselves. But with that, you go on the job and you are re-traumatized over and over and over again. And, you're starting from the place you're coming from makes you even more susceptible, I think, to the trauma you face on the job, because she had a lot of unresolved hurt that I don't even think it was by conscious choice, but she just wanted to put it behind her and forget it and move on. And, and unfortunately, we're not really able to do that. Very few people, I think, are able to do that. And so after the birth of our second daughter, her mental health really deteriorated. And the wheels completely fell off. And for the last 5 years of her life, she was, it went from homeless shelters to rehab to electroshock therapy, psych wards. She tried everything she could imagine. She did all the things, went to all the programs, saw the counselors and therapists and psychiatrists, took all the drugs, and things just continued to spiral downward. And by 2010, she really just couldn't fight anymore. She gave everything she had. And I've often thought that were I in her situation, I don't know that I would have been able to fight as long as she did. Understanding the very consistent inconsolable mental anguish that she was dealing with. And so on March 26, 2010, she took her own life. And that experience, I think what's been an interesting, what's been, I guess, interesting and unexpected and horrible about that experience is that I've come to see now that it directly contributed to my daughter's, Chloe's, death, because her mom's suicide shattered her soul. You know, she was just never really able to recover from it. And so as her young life progressed, you know, she was 6 and her sister was 5 when Cindy passed away. And by the end of Chloe's life, she was dealing with the same mental health issues, or what appeared to be the same mental health issues as her mother. And her life had become just completely unmanageable. She was living on her own, and she was not willing to get help. She's not ready to get help. And I think she was not in any kind of mental and emotional condition to even to even want to make the decision to get help, I would say. And so ultimately on February 1st, 2023, she died in a car accident. And to make it an already horrible situation even worse, she was driving drunk and stoned and speeding like a maniac. And she almost killed 4 other people. She's not wearing her seatbelt. She got into a head-on collision. So there was somebody in the car with her and then 3 people in the other car. They all survived, thank God. But it was a horrific accident, and she passed away. So yeah, that's what led, those are the events that led us to be sitting here talking today.
Your heart truly, I'm sure, was shattered again. And I think you're incredibly brave to be talking about it. And we're so honored to have you here, because I know this is going to help so many people deal with all kinds of grief.
Yeah. You know, I saw one of your posts yesterday about, you know, doing this and what you're doing and what we're doing, and telling stories, the same story over, and how hard it is, and how exhausting it is, you know, and you just wonder if you're ever helping people out there, and then you get people who contact you and thank you for your vulnerability and your honesty, and that keeps you, you know, that gives you the strength to keep moving forward. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, you know, one of the things I've come to realize over the years is we're always surrounded by people waiting for somebody else to go first. And when you can drop the mask and share a little bit more of your experience, and, you know, not just the highlight reel, but the real experience of the complexity and messiness of being human, they can make it safe for other people to do the same thing. And so to me, that seems like a contribution to my fellow human beings. If it helps me, and maybe if it helps them, then it's worth doing.
Yeah, it's that safe space that people, you know, are comfortable. So again, being a father who lost his daughter to eating disorder, I certainly understand the grieving process, and we all know that grieving is not a linear process. You bounce from one stage to another, and grief never goes away, and it shows up when you least expect it. Watching a movie, listening to music, driving a car, whatever, it just kind of pops into your life again. And for you, the loss of your beautiful wife Cindy to suicide, and then your precious daughter Chloe, is just unimaginable. And as a man, you know, you're always told to be strong, because that's what we've been told as a society. Men have to be strong; they can't cry, and that's what we're supposed to do. So, when on your journey did the maladaptive coping behavior of drinking? When did that begin?
Oh, well, so that really began during Cindy's during the 5 years dealing with Cindy's mental health issues prior to her death. And I think the reason was because, to your point, Jack, what I wanted more than anything else is I learned afterwards, I was watching my wife die. It was really what was happening over the course of 5 years. And the most important thing for me was to create the illusion for myself, but also for other people, that I had it together, and it used to be really valuable. I used to find it really valuable when people would say things to me like, Jason, you're so strong. You're when I wish my son would grow up to be just like you, and all this stuff. But the thing is, nobody saw what was happening behind closed doors. Nobody saw me drinking myself to passing out most nights. Nobody saw the things that I, midst of like anger and confusion and fear and all of those things. I mean, I did a lot of things I was proud of, and I did some things that I was very ashamed of. And so there was this disconnect between the version of myself that I was showing to the world and what I really knew was happening. And that made an already difficult situation even more difficult. And so I just started drinking. I mean, I drank before, for sure, but I just, that was the crutch that just seemed like the path of least resistance, to be honest with you. And it happened for, I drank that heavily for about 10 years, until about 5 years after Cindy's death. And what I think is really the most profound realization I had was, number one, when Cindy died, I mean, obviously finding out she took her own life was a shock on one hand. On the other hand, it wasn't really that surprising because it was something that I imagined could happen many times, seeing, just how much she was struggling. And so I remember driving literally just leaving the cemetery after her funeral and saying to myself, okay, that chapter's over. It's time to move on. And really believing that I could do that, because at that time, I thought grief was a thing that weak people did. I don't even know where I got this idea, but, the world keeps turning. Things have to be done. There's kids that have to be raised, a new life that has to be rebuilt. Who else is going to do it? I mean, I need to do it. And so the idea of grief in my mind was, I was the strong person. So, I'll do the things that need to get done while the weak people grieve. And so, but I kept drinking. So even though I had put it behind me, I kept drinking. I ended up remarrying, and it was probably 4.5 years after Cindy passed away that I had sort of my rock bottom moment, let's say, and stopped drinking. And what I realized though afterwards, and I think this is the profound realization, is once I stopped drinking, I started grieving Cindy's death. It took me about 6 months after I stopped drinking to give myself that sort of mental and emotional space. And I started having all of these really intense emotions, sadness, like thinking about her all the time, starting to write about her, visiting her grave more often. And it was actually my current wife, Tanya, who I said to her, I said, I feel like I'm going crazy. I don't even know what's happening to me right now. And she goes, these were her exact words. She said, "You're grieving, dummy." And I was like, wow, that feels true, And so, but here's the thing is as I, stopped drinking and started to grieve, during the time that I was drinking, I never not one single time connected the two things. The fact that I was drinking and I couldn't stop was Cindy's suicide and the pain from that. Because I thought I had moved on. And it wasn't until I allowed myself to grieve and to start to heal from that it became so obvious to me what I was doing. But as I'm not a total dummy, the fact that I could do this, like punish myself or abuse myself or cope in this way and have no idea what was happening, like the underlying reason why I was doing it. That's one of the things that made me really passionate about, speaking, just talking and speaking and writing and trying to help other people, maybe help them see what I can see now, but wasn't able to see at the time.
Yeah. So during that whole, those years of drinking, was there anyone that supported you out there? Friends, family?
Well, I mean, I would say it was my wife, Tanya, my current wife, Tanya. I mean, she, by supporting me, what she really, the biggest thing she did for me was help convince me, or at least help open the door in my mind to the idea how much I was holding myself back and how capable how much more I was capable of. But also, I think that the way she supported me too was by being really committed to her own growth and continual evolution. And what was happening was I could see that our trajectories were diverging, let's say. And so I was stagnant, and she was kind of trapped in the past. And she was growing. And if I projected out to the future, I could see that there's going to become a time, if I don't do something here to change myself, there's going to be a time when that gap between us is too big to bridge, and then, she also made it very clear to me that, look, I love you. And I'm not saying I'm going to divorce you right now or anything, but this is also, you need to understand that this is not going to be my life, and I remember her telling me that and not being sure what I was going to choose, because I didn't think I could stop drinking, and I immediately started trying to rationalize in my mind how I could make continuing to drink without her okay. And I could never come up with a way of making that make sense to me. So, I mean, it was her modeling, leading by example, but also making her expectations, I think, and clear to me, was very, very helpful. And I think as far as support goes, I think those are the most important things anybody did for me.
Yeah. I'm so happy she was there for you.
Me too.
Yeah.
Her honesty and helping you kind of redirect and kind of reassess where you're at was beautifully supportive. Jason, your insight and courage to boldly express your deep grief and deep understanding of grief from a male perspective opens the door for necessary conversations and healing for you, but so many others who have remained silent. It truly is that closed off compartment that so many people avoid. I want to refer to a statement from Substack that really resonates deeply with me. Grief is an all-consuming journey. It fractures the mind, overwhelms the heart, and weighs on the body like a boat anchor around your neck. And I think that just hit me, the reality. Will you talk a little more about this in terms of your experience and your reflections?
Yeah, I'd love.
In your Substack too.
I will. What's really interesting actually is there's an experience that literally just happened to me yesterday that I think is really illustrative of the point I was trying to make in that Substack, because I think that people, you hear the word grief and to somebody who's been fortunate enough not to lose someone they love yet. Or maybe lose someone, like maybe lose a parent or something that it's not like, obviously we still grieve the loss of our parents, but it's more of a natural cycle of life, let's say. Not to minimize anybody's experience, but grief, unless you've really been deeply in it, I think it's almost impossible to understand what it is actually like. And so there's this concept of like, I'm grieving, I'll feel bad, like it'll be hard, but to understand what that actually means on a day-to-day basis that's really what I want to try to communicate to people. So I'll give you an example. It was just yesterday. So my wife posted a picture on Facebook, reposted a memory, and it was both of our daughters, and it was from 5 years ago. And I just happened to see it. I was sitting right here, and I just found myself looking. So Chloe would have been about, I think, 15 at that time, 14 or 15. And I found myself just sitting here staring into her eyes in this picture for, I don't know how long I did it. I started crying, and I was trying to almost look inside her soul and try to unravel what was going on in there, because there was so much with deal with her mental health issues that she kept hidden and lied about. And, and so I'm looking at this picture and I'm trying to look inside her soul and then realizing that I'm never going to know more about her experience than I know right now. There's no way for me to know more about it. I mean, she's dead. And so what happened was that experience was very intense for me. And then what happened was this: throughout the course of the day, I felt this physical and emotional, like all-consuming, like pressure building up in my body, like from the inside. Like I wanted to explode. I made it till about the afternoon, and the need to escape just in any way was so strong. And, I wanted to get stoned really bad, which I did not do. I tried very hard to, being sober and clear-minded, like throughout this experience is really important to me because I lived the other side. But that doesn't mean that the urges, especially in the really moments of feel intolerable, they're strong. They can be strong. And so I left the house and I started driving around. And what I ended up doing was I couldn't go back here for some reason. And so I ended up driving an hour to where my wife, Cindy, is buried. And I went to the cemetery and it was a beautiful day. And I laid on her grave, I just laid in the grass on her grave. And I was thinking then what happened was I'm laying there and it's sort of peaceful, but just also still completely surreal that this is actually what's happening here. And then I started to get creeped out that her corpse is basically a few feet underneath me. So I laughed. I got up and left, but I was thinking to myself, like, this is what grief is. Like when the least worst option of dealing with my daughter's death is going and lying on my wife's grave. Like, 25 months after my daughter died. But just for people to understand that grief is mental, it's emotional, it is physical. Like it can completely wipe you out, like your energy levels to the point where you can't do anything. It impacts your ability to be around other people. Like it impacts your capacity to do work. I've always considered myself like this, or identified anyways, as this big overachiever person who can do all of these things, can take on all this stuff. I mean, I don't think that was actually true, but I definitely convinced myself that was true. I can't even pretend to do that anymore. That my capacity to produce work, even 25 months later, is not the same as it was. I don't know if it will ever come back, and so that's sort of an identity confronting experience. Like, who am I now? If I'm not the Mr. Overachiever guy, who am I? And so when I say, like in that quote, that's what I mean. It's everything, and it's trying to figure out how to sit with it, face what needs to be faced, and integrate what needs to be learned into a new version of your life.
Yeah. I can remember going back to work and, listening to people complain about things in their life, and it's, and it's just a pity, they were just complaining about, the nonsense things. And I'm standing there listening to them and saying, do you hear yourself? And
you're thinking it, you're not saying it.
No, I'm just thinking in my mind, like, do you really listen to what you're complaining about? And here I am, just a few days after my daughter died, standing here trying to fill prescriptions again and trying to focus and
the rest of the world at that time almost kind of seems like blah, 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 because they're so into all that's going on and all that you're processing in your own mind. Yeah. Jason, we know that grief always has many layers, but even more layers when a death is one that most can't understand or perhaps believe the death was preventable. We don't want anyone to experience this kind of grief, yet we still need people to walk alongside us, especially when it's a complex grief. How did you navigate judgment that you must have felt at times, and how did your circle of friends evolve after?
That's a great question. So are you asking me the judgment I felt from about myself or from other people or all of it?
I think mostly from other people, but however you want to respond is wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So I think one of the things, I'm sure you've experienced this, and many of your listeners who have lost somebody, is one of the things that one of the unexpected things, I think, or one of the phenomena, let's say, that makes it grief even more complex is the way people do or do not show up, like that you would expect them to, right? So you have all these people in your life, and they obviously love you, and but what they do or don't do can be really surprising. You know, I've had people very close to me who have literally never said a word about it. You know, I have people that just have stopped reaching out, you know, and part of that is on me too, because I am much less likely to reach out than maybe I was before. I think, but yeah, I think for me, you have to, in order to, I think, heal and navigate this particular thing about the fact that nobody knows how to support somebody, or very few people know how to support somebody who's grieving. They're afraid of saying the wrong thing. They're afraid of bringing up something, like bringing up the loss, because it might upset you and all that. So what people do is they tend to pull back and not say anything. And I think for me, you have to accept, one of the ways I tend to look at the world is to believe that everybody's doing the best they can in the moment. If they could be doing better, they would, you know, and sometimes their best is terrible, but they're doing their best. And so when I look at some of the people in my life who literally have not said a word to me, including my own brother, I mean, it's pretty weird, but I don't really have any anger or resentment about it. I mean, it is what it is, you know, and so I think that's an important thing, is like, that will definitely happen to you, is that people will, you know, quote, let you down or not do what you would have hoped they would do. And I think, you know, we all have a choice to make on how we navigate that. I choose to be pretty compassionate and forgiving. And, you know, I always think of the quote of, you know, resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So, yeah, I mean, but I do think that, you know, I'm sure there's people that have judgment about me, especially people who haven't experienced, let's say, the loss of a child. You know, I had a friend actually who came over a few weeks ago, and she said, I mean, she was really just expressing concern. It wasn't a judgment, but you know, I'm worried that you're stuck in grief, right? And because I talk about it a lot, and I mean, I'll be honest, I wonder that too. Actually, like, does me talking about this and writing about it, is any of this? Is this me moving forward? Is this me being stuck? I mean, it's not always obvious to me, I think, but I'm very confident that I'm healing and moving forward, even though it remains incredibly difficult at times. But so she asked me that question, you know, like, I'm worried, or just expressed like, I'm worried that, you know, you might be stuck in grief. And so it wasn't a chance for me to talk to her about like what the loss of a child is like, and maybe educate her a little bit. But I'm sure there's people who think that, you know, look at this guy, he's not moving on. He's still talking about his daughter so much. But I mean, I'm not, I just don't really worry too much about that. What I will say though is so when I look at my daughter Chloe's death, one of the things that I have told myself over and over and over again, and really believed, was that I don't feel guilty, like, about her death, because I did my best. You know, I mean, it was a super complex situation. I did my best. Being a great dad is the most important thing in the world to me. And so, you know, that's what I told myself. And I literally realized maybe 3 weeks ago in a session with my therapist that that's not true, that I do feel guilty. And realizing, and that when I realized that, and I realized that the logical way that I have been talking about it, like all those things I just said, I did my best, being a dad was important, like all that when I realized that was a coping mechanism rather than what was actually true for me, it was incredibly deflating, because I realized that there's another mountain I have to climb now. Now I got to deal I don't have any, I'm so tired of experiencing this. Like just thinking about it and having like just all of it. It's so freaking exhausting. And to realize that this thing that I thought I believed about not feeling, to realize that, no, I actually do feel guilty. And now I have to work through this guilt. I mean, I was walking with my wife later that night and I just started to cry because I said, I don't want to face this right now. I don't have the energy to face it right now. Of course you have to, but it's like there's always another layer to the onion to be peeled back, and doing it really sucks sometimes.
Yeah.
Have your friendships changed?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, I would say, they have, because for people that I, like I said, I am or was close to, who really didn't show up in the way that maybe I would have liked them to, or maybe that the way that I expected them to. Like I said, I'm not angry or resentful at all, but at the same time, I do question, how close can I be with you now? You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I'm not sure how to think about that, but I feel not as close to most of the people, many of the people, maybe not most, but many of the people that were in my life or in my circle at that time. But at the same time, I've made some awesome new friends as well. So yeah, they definitely changed. And part of that too is not just them, it's me. I don't like, like I don't like being around people as much as I used to. I used to be an incredibly social person, and again, and I think part of what makes it so challenging is we never know what the future holds anyways, but I look at these changes in myself that were, I think, pretty fundamental to how I saw myself, like, again, that overachiever, super social person, all that. Now those things are different, and I don't know if that's permanent. I don't know if that's going to come, what will come back, like any of it, so there's a lot of uncertainty around like some fairly core self-identity things that are not certain anymore. That also adds to the complexity of grief.
Well, when you talk about other people, I think it comes down to capacity. Not everybody has the capacity to be able to show up the way you might need them to. But you're right, people are doing their best. And I also believe that even nobody would choose these journeys, but it changes us. And when you say you don't like the same things anymore, I think that, we've grown in ways, and it's wonderful to have grown, but we have never have chosen to do it in these ways. And it's about quality of relationships, quality of time, what's more important. And I think we'll be forever changing with all the experiences in our lives. But I think the experience that you've gone through, both of those experiences, has catapulted you very, very far in your own growth journey. And it's wonderful that you're so open in sharing it with so many people.
Yeah, and you're always going to look back. Like Linda always says, we would do dozens of things the same, dozens of things differently, but a million things the same. So, we did the best with the knowledge we had at the time and the system we worked with at the time, and so
the woulda, coulda, shouldas that kill you.
Yeah.
They will. I mean, just if you stay there.
Well, and I think too, one of the things I've learned, I think it was I've learned this through a book by David Kessler, or maybe a podcast, but he was talking about how one of the reasons that we do this, like as torturous as it is to go back and do the woulda, shoulda, couldas, it actually creates this illusion of control in a sea of chaos and uncertainty, because the idea is that what we do is when we go back and we say, if only I had done X, they'd still be alive. But the reality is, you don't know if you did X, what would have happened, right? And so as torturous as it is, it's that sense of that illusion of certainty is actually easier to deal with or navigate than realizing just how little control you ever had in the first place. Because that's pretty unmooring for a parent to think about how many factors influence the trajectory of our kids' lives that we have no control over whatsoever.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I started following you on LinkedIn. I saw a post you put up, and it was called "Man Down," and it really caught me. And I looked at this post, and in it you have the tools that you share to help men through their grieving process. It's a whole toolbox. And so, what are the biggest mistakes that men make in the grieving process?
Wow. Yeah. So what's interesting about that Man Down is I started writing a book about grief for men. I was talking to my wife about this last night after I got home from my drive to the cemetery. And I was saying, I haven't been writing it late. I've been writing other stuff about grief, but I haven't been writing this book lately. And I was saying to her, I think it's because the longer I go through this grieving process, the less I feel like I know about any of it. You know what I mean? It almost is. So it's almost like I want to pause doing this for a second, like a minute, until I just experience this more. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, some of the mistakes that men make are, oh my goodness. I mean, coping all of the maladaptive coping that we can do, anything other than facing it is just sitting with it and facing the experience. Basically, everything else makes it worse. I mean, and there's almost infinite ways to do that. So, with guys, in my experience, it's turning to alcohol or drugs, or overworking is another one. Anything to distract yourself from facing what needs to be faced. I think another mistake that men, I don't know if it's a mistake or it's just a fundamental lack of knowledge that leads to unproductive or damaging behavior, is most guys don't have any concept or vocabulary to describe their emotional experience. They don't recognize the difference between primary and secondary emotions. So let's say a man who lost a child and is dealing with tremendous guilt for the loss of his child, oftentimes what they will do is they will express that as anger by lashing out at the people around them without having the emotional intelligence to understand that anger, especially in men, is almost always a secondary emotion. There's always something else underneath it. Like, I feel tremendously guilty, or I feel like a failure as a father, or whatever. And so many men don't have the vocabulary to be able to articulate their emotional experience, and it causes that the inability to express it causes it to be it's going to come out. So the inability to express it in a constructive, healthy way means it's going to come out in a destructive and unhealthy way. So I think that's a big again, it's not really a mistake, it's just a result of the way a lot of us have grown up, so that's a big one. I mean, those are probably, there's lots I think that we make, but I think those are two of the biggest. I think the biggest one is just finding maladaptive ways to tolerate the intolerable, and to try to keep putting one foot in front of the other. I mean, I think one other thing too, and this is necessarily related to men. This is, I think, related to anyone who's really grieving, and really it's related to what we tend to do as humans. But after Chloe died, I'd never been on TikTok before, but I've been made a lot of videos and what I do for a living and stuff. And so now I'm pretty comfortable in front of a camera. Anyways, I just started making this, I thought, well, maybe I'll start a TikTok account and I'll just start talking about grief. And it is wild what has happened. I mean, these videos, just me sitting in my car talking about grief, they've been seen like 40 million times, and they, tens and like 70,000 comments that people have made or something like that. But here's the reason that's been so insightful for me is I see how unproductive or limiting the language that people use to describe their experience, because words create worlds. Like the words and language and metaphors we use, they don't just describe our reality, they define it. So you have to be really intentional about what you're like the reality you're boldly speaking into existence. So for example, the number of parents that say things like, I lost a child, I'm permanently broken. Okay. I mean, I know you feel that way. Anybody who's lost a child feels that way, but wow. Or another one is, oh, you lost your wife and your daughter. It's so unfair. Or no parent should have to lose a child. Well, parents have been losing children since human beings have been human beings and will continue to lose children until the end of days, right? Or it has nothing to do with fairness. And so my point is that I think one of the mistakes that people make, and men, obviously men included, is that we use words to describe our experience that leave us stuck. So whenever I talk about something really painful, like one of the really painful experiences about grief, I tend to end it with, and I'm healing and moving forward and remain super optimistic that I will continue to rebuild a meaningful and impactful life, because that's the thing that I hold on to. Maybe I'll say one more thing too, actually, is we give up control. We don't understand what is in our control and what is out of our control. And one of the things that is in our control that no one can take away from us except for ourselves is the power to choose how we look at things, how we look at what's happened to us, what is happening to us right now, and what we want to happen to us in the future. And so for example, let's say I was lucky enough to live to 100, I could walk around feeling ripped off for the rest of my life that I didn't get to spend 70 years on this earth with Chloe. Or I could choose to be grateful for the 19 years I had because it's a hell of a lot better than 0.
Yeah.
And when I am overwhelmed with grief, I might not have the ability to, like, when the pain is just so intense, I might not have the ability to be grateful in that particular moment. But I always know that when this wave of grief passes, like they always do, that I will be able to be grateful again. Like I'll be able to choose gratitude again. And even in the most difficult moments where I can't choose it, just knowing that I'll be able to again makes an intolerable situation just slightly more tolerable.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said.
Yeah, really.
Absolutely incredible. You hit so many points and are so clear, and certainly the healing and moving through and maintaining that optimism of going forward is critical. We've all experienced that, and it is so important because that is what our loved ones would want for us. You need to move forward. You need to find joy. Here we go, leading through loss. What to do, what to say, and how to lead when someone on your team is grieving. So this is a topic that we're all really beginning to come with terms with because as a culture and a society, we just don't understand how to deal with grief, whether it's our own personal grief, whether it's a colleague, someone we love. And there's just so much discomfort and avoidance. And I think you have some incredible wisdom regarding this. And we can all learn from your experience and your leadership on this topic. And how do we deal with that when someone's close to us is really struggling?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because one of the things that I've thought I've been profoundly grateful for through this experience is that I am able to do work I love with people I love doing it with. And so when Chloe died, I was basically, I heard what you said earlier, Jack, about, having to go back to work shortly after. I was pretty much non-functional for 2 months. But my business partners just completely stepped up and supported me. And it just, I'll be grateful for the rest of my life the way they had my back. But I thought many times about how much more painful an already painful experience would be if I had to go to a job I hate with people that I hated doing the job with, or for a crappy boss or whatever. It would be oh my God, it'd just be a nightmare. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to show people, leaders, because in my business, one of the businesses, we do a lot of leadership development and management consulting. And I wanted people just to understand, number one, that what grief is, because in our, as you alluded to, in our society, we have the most limited understanding of death and grief and a fear of death and all of that. And so, I wanted to explain that to people, but I also wanted to give them some tools on how to, like, for example, how to empathize with someone without trying to fix their pain or their problem. Just to sit with them and just say, that sounds really hard, and just to hold space for them and, be someone that they can just help them feel seen, heard, and safe without, trying to correct, guide, give advice, fix. Because when somebody's grieving, it's not fixable. It's not even something to be fixed, right? It's just a normal human experience after loss. And so I wanted to give them some tools on that. I wanted to teach them how to more effectively communicate with someone, because one of the main reasons is because when you're in any kind of leadership position, you're in the relationship business. And so if you're able to have some tools to navigate, to help communicate effectively and support someone in their most difficult moments, those same tools apply in all the other moments too. So really what I wanted to get across to people is the tools that I'm teaching them on how to communicate and hold space and all that, these are relationship tools. They work in every relationship you have in your life. So they're really high leverage or high returning investments of your time and money and energy. So, but fundamentally, that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to try to help people understand how to bring a little bit more compassion and empathy into the workplace. And at the same time, also understand, in business, the business also needs to run, right? So if you have somebody in your grieving on your team, like, how do you talk to them if they're unable to, if they're unable to do the job, because their grief just has them overwhelmed and operating at way below their normal capacity? How do you talk to them in a way that, doesn't feel like a threat or causes them to, just in a supportive way, but also a way that maybe, makes, expectations clear, et cetera. So anyways, I just wanted to teach some of those tools to people, because that's often what we do in our leadership training businesses, teach people how to communicate better with each other.
And those are practices. You have to practice those things. And I think that's what people don't realize. It sounds so simple, but it's very important sometimes to take a few breaths before you say a word and think about how you're going to frame something. But it's beautifully said.
One of the things I wanted to say too is on that is because I think one of the reasons that grief is so hard for people, supporting a grieving person is so hard for people that care about them, because we don't understand, we don't have the ability to sit with really uncomfortable emotions in another person. So often what happens is there's this idea of fusion and self-differentiation. So fusion is, my emotional condition is dictated by your emotional condition. So if you're grieving and you're really in the thick of it and you're in pain, and I am with you and being with you and trying to support you, people worry that, and often will allow the pain of the other person's experience to take over their experience. So they'll take it on. And it's really difficult for people. But self-differentiation, this is something else we teach, is the ability to deeply empathize with another human being, and also have that, to have a level of separation from your own experience. So I can deeply empathize with your experience without having it take over or ruin my own. Right. And so I think that's it's very hard for people to sit with somebody else who's in pain or dealing with really intense emotions. And so being able to separate those things, I think, is an important skill to show up for someone who's grieving.
Yeah, for sure. We always, you go to the store when somebody passes away, and you get a sympathy card to send everybody, and everybody gets hundreds of sympathy cards, right? But it's the empathy from people that you really need to. It's easy to say, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry for your loss, I'm so sorry for your loss, over and over and over again. But it's
those things are helpful, but
they're helpful. But,
absolutely,
but those of us that have lost people like, we have, that you're always trying to find more words than "I'm so sorry for your loss."
Yeah.
Something that really resonates with that person.
Well, and almost anything that we say, you can find fault with it too. So you do have to be forgiving, and people are doing their best, and we've all said the wrong things. So yeah, it's complicated though, because you just want the person to feel better. You just want to do something to make it better, and other than really being there and listening, there's not a whole lot that you can do, right? But
That's right.
Well, I think all of us in this experience, when we ever connected with someone else who had a close experience, similar, loss of a child, there's that instant connection. There's an understanding. There's an unspokenness, and it's where those powerful hugs come into play.
and just knowing that somebody else gets it,
Yes.
that they get it. Yeah. Jason, where can people find you? I mean, you're a businessman, you're a TikTok guy, you're incredibly out there, with your grief and your Substack. And so can you just tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my Substack is called Improving the Condition of Man. And it's, I think you alluded to it in the intro, but it's improvingman.substack.com. And it's really where I write about other stuff, but mostly about grief for men and the people who love them. And then on TikTok, it's jason.s.MacKenzie, and that's MAC. And yeah, those are the primary places. I mean, I'm on Facebook too and all that, but I do most of my writing or communicating about grief on those two platforms.
Well, we have something in common because I started a grief book too, but I'm stuck. I don't have that much time to write anymore, but I will finish it at some point. But I find that the process of writing and just slowing down and putting stuff on paper is so cathartic for me. And I do need to find blocks of time to do it on a regular basis, and I think it's really helpful.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I started writing it on. I started writing the book. I just started posting on Substack because I thought to myself, I want to help, give value to or help people as quickly as possible. And I know if I just decided to write the book and then publish it when I was done, it would take me forever to get something useful into people's hands. So what I do now is I just write, I just publish it chapter by chapter as I'm thinking about it. And, eventually at some point I'll go back and, edit the whole thing as a book and put it all together. But right now that's how I do it. It makes it more approachable to me.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Yeah. So you've done so much work learning communication skills to improve relationships, personal relationships, business relationships, and just people's quality of life in general, which is so important. And one of the things that I read that you really focus on is emotional validation. It's one of the most important skills that you teach. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I mean, emotional validation is actually, it's really the, seeking to understand, acknowledge, and accept somebody else's emotional experience. So, and literally it can be when somebody's upset, it can be as simple as saying, wow, that sounds really hard. And then just being quiet. I think everybody's having their own experience all the time, completely unique to them. And yours is as legitimate to you as mine is to me. And so there is no right or wrong experience. So emotional validation is just recognizing that I want to understand, acknowledge, and accept that you're completely entitled to have whatever emotional experience you're having. That's it, without trying to fix it and now that doesn't mean that emotional validation is not condoning crappy behavior, no boundaries. There's nothing like that. I mean, there's no right or wrong emotions, but there's acceptable and unacceptable behavior, right? So you could be very upset about something, and I could validate that. But if while you're being upset, you throw your TV through the window, I mean, okay, that's something different, right? So yeah, it's really about I think what it is actually, and this is one of the biggest gifts that's come from Chloe's passing, is that I've given up on the idea that I know what's right for what's best for anybody else. I have no idea what is right for the three of you or anybody else in this world. So I used to have to, after I learned the skill of emotional validation, I was able to stop myself from giving people unwanted advice when they were upset, but it was a challenge for sure. Now I no longer labor under the illusion that I know what's best for anybody else. So it's very easy for me just to be present with somebody's emotional experience and validate it, because ultimately at the end of the day, they're the ones who know what's best for them. And if I can maybe play a role in helping them uncover that for themselves, that seems to me to be a much more meaningful contribution to them than if I just swoop in and dispense some unsolicited advice.
Wow. Yeah. Listening to someone is just all that they really need at most of the time, just to have somebody to be there and not be alone, just to have somebody that is there to listen to them. So.
Listen. Once again, we're talking about the importance of connection. And when someone is struggling, we can help, but are we up to the challenge? And I love how you address this topic, the need to show up differently. It's key. Can you expand on this a little bit and share is there any more tools that you have for all of us? Because you truly are opening up this, just getting people to think about grief and processing through and doing some reflection and how is it impacting us, talking about vocabulary. You have a powerful message and really honor that. So if you can share a little bit more before you go.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to, I think for me, going back to what we were talking about earlier about the power of our words, I think for me, so when I deal with really uncomfortable, really painful emotions as it relates to grief, I used to tell myself that, Jason, you need to allow yourself to fully experience this, which is true. Without trying to change it or cope with it or distract myself. But what I found was that way of talking about it, just in my own head, felt very passive to me. And so what I did was I just started reminding myself to, when these emotions happen, to stiffen my spine, square my shoulders, and face it. And even though I'm not actually doing anything different, it's really just allowing myself to experience. But I find for me the imagery, let's say, and the feeling of that, maybe it's a masculine way of approaching it or whatever, but it gives me strength to just know that I am facing it. Seems more active to me than experiencing it, which just for me personally, it might be completely different for somebody else, but I find using active language gives me a sense of strength and empowerment that allows me to navigate those really painful situations in a way that will be more likely to lead me toward healing than away from it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Beautifully said. The time has gone by way too fast. So, Jason, thank you so much for coming onto our podcast and sharing your journey and your wisdom and your light with all of us. It's been absolutely wonderful. And I'm sure our listeners are enjoying it, and I'm sure it will make a difference in a lot of lives. And I'm sure it will be contributing to your Substack viewership for sure. So thank you, Jason. And people, check out Substack, Improving the Condition of Man.
Thank you, Jason. Once again, I'm so glad that we connected and that you're here with us today. Thank you so much.
Jason, thank you. This was an enlightening conversation, and one that many of us need to take the time to really process and think through. thank you for your leadership and all that you're doing. And bless you for all you've experienced through your life.
Thanks so much for having me. It was really an honor to be here with you.
We extend our sincere gratitude to you, Jason. Thank you. And of course, a big shout out to Rockfox Recording and Production and Scott Fitzgerald. He's our remarkable sound engineer, and he expertly produces this podcast and so much more.
Please rate, review, share, and subscribe to this podcast, Once Shattered, Picking Up the Pieces, on whichever platform you're listening on. And check out our YouTube channel, learn more about Linda and Jack Mazur, the founders of the Emily Connection, and their beautiful book, Emily, the Story of a Girl and Her Family, Hijacked by Anorexia, available on Amazon.
And learn more about our wonderful co-host, Ellen Bennett, and her nonprofit organization, KMB for Answers, formed in honor of her wonderful daughter, Katie, and the great things that they are doing and have done for so many years. The discussions that we have here with our guests are so important, so incredibly important, as they emphasize the importance of mental health for every one of us. Thank you, listeners.